When you're in prison and you see something that you should not see, what do? Well, you look the other way or you lace up. That's your only two options. You don't wait to go on the yard and parlay with shot callers to get permission to get off. You just do. Welcome to the South, where prisons are like the Wild West. And I'm going to tell you a few stories on people who saw stuff that they should not have seen, and they had a split-second decision to make on what to do next. And in prison, sometimes a split second is all you have to make a decision where life and death could hang in the balance. You can't be overanalyzing something that you've seen or you thought you seen when you should not have seen what you thought you seen because you stumbled upon something accidentally. You need to be prepared and ready all the time. You don't have time in prison to overanalyze situations that are pertinent to you doing your time in a manner that suits you to where you can be peaceful and do your time, minding your business. Because you done stumbled upon somebody doing something they never should have been doing in the first place. And they might not want you to tell everybody else what you saw. That's why I said one of your options is to pretend like you didn't see what you think you saw. That's usually your best option. You know what I mean? Maybe I didn't see that. Or I ain't going to tell nobody what I saw. I was talking to a dude in DeQuincy, Louisiana. We were in DeQuincy. This was like his third time in prison. He was in DeQuincy in the 70s. And he was telling me how wild it was back when he went. In the 70s, every single prison in the South was wild. And every prison in Louisiana was the Wild West. And he was saying he remembers that he was a young dude and somebody had broken his locker and stole all his clothes. They stole his nice visitation pants, his visitation shirt. They stole he had socks, boxers, tank tops, and Zuzus and Wham Whams that came up missing. And he's old at the time I'm talking to him when we chopping it up on a yard in DeQuincy. And he's telling me, yeah, youngster, back in the days, it used to be wild over here. He said, you see that canteen line? I said, yeah. He said, back then, you wasn't making canteen if you was weak. In the 70s, he said, you'll get shanked behind some canteen. I said, behind some canteen? I said, dudes will stick you up now. He said, they ain't just a stick up. They were going to straight up make you bleed if you didn't give up that canteen. I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, you had to walk with somebody you trusted that was going to have your back and watch your six. Because them dudes were going to take your canteen. And he was saying, I was young. It was my first time, in prison. And he said it was in the 70s. And I remember talking to him. And he said it was around 1977. Because I remember talking to him and he was saying it's around you about as old. You were probably just born when this happened to me, youngster. And I said, yeah. He said, yeah. He said, anyway. He said, man, I go to take a leak. And this is after his locker gets broken into and things are stolen. And he goes to take a leak. And when he goes to take a leak, it's the dorm's quiet, ain't nobody up. It's late at night. It's probably 2, 3 in the morning during a work night. If you know anything about work nights, that means work calls in the morning. People got to get up and do that field work. So most dudes are laying back sleeping. They're exhausted from the work the day before. And it's a work night. The dorm shuts down. TV shuts down. Everything shuts down. He gets up to go take a leak. And he looks. And sitting on the toilet is another inmate. And he's fiddling with himself. And you know what I mean. Except he's not just fiddling with himself. He's sniffing a pair of boxers. He got a pair of boxers in his face and his hands in his groin area. And the dude said, when I looked, I saw that the boxers he had in his face was my boxers. In prison, your name is stenciled onto your belongings. Your clothing, like a shirt like I have on, this thermal shirt would have my name or my DOC number on it. And that's how they identify you. You're either going to get your name or your DOC number on it, or you're going to write it on there yourself. The dude had the stencil and his name was on there and he was sniffing. He was the dude who obviously stole dude's stuff. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, man. He said, my heart just fell out my chest when I saw that dude sitting there and he had his thing in his hand, grasp, and he was just chucking along, and he had my boxes in his face, and he was sniffing them. And when he saw it was me, at first he got startled, but he realized it was me, and he realized he had my stuff, and I guess he was lusting after me, the dude said. He kind of startled for a minute and was like, and he said he just went back right at to doing it. He said, I instantly had a decision to make at the drop of a dime. I said, what you did, bruh? He said, man, I just broke out in a run toward him, and I jumped in the air, and he said, I just kicked him dead in his chest. He said, I fell back. When I kicked him, he said his foot landed in old boy's chest. Dude had his boxes like this and his hand like this. He said when he kicked dude went back like that. He said his foot literally hits the dude in his chest, and he said he falls down on the concrete and he slips. He says he goes to get back up. The dude goes to get back up, but when he kicked the dude kind of, went into the toilet a little bit and fell in the toilet, and he was kind of in a bad position. He said he hurried up and got on top of that dude and just went to boom, 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 boom. By this time, the whole dorm's woken up, and he's like, man, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to unalive you. And he's just punching this dude. And the dude's in a bad place because he done caught him off guard. And when he kicked him, he must have took the wind out of old boy. He said old boy was sitting there just looking, he was just punching him in the face. And he said, man, he whipped the dog mess out of that dude. He said, man, that dude, I said, what happened? I said, dude did. He said, man, I must have stunned him and took the wind out of him so hard when I kicked him in his chest. He said he didn't get one single hit on me. I said he didn't get one hit. He said he didn't get one hit. He said I whipped that dude and kept whipping him and kept beating. He said I was stomping on his face. And he said, I did not stop until the officers got back in there. You know what I mean? And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, man, it was brutal. And I'm like, dang, dude was smelling your drawers? I'm stuck on that. I'm like, dude was sniffing your stuff? He's like, man, them dudes were freaks back then. He was smelling my underwear. He said, I ain't never seen that dude again. You know what I mean? I whipped him so bad, they moved him to the cell block, you know what I mean? He said he must have got transferred. He said, I ain't never seen him again. He said, he told me to this day, he said, this is my, and I'm talking to him in modern times. He said, if I run into this dude again, he said, every time I come to DeQuincy, because he'd been to multiple prisons. He had been to Angola, he had been to DeQuincy, he had been throughout the whole gauntlet of Louisiana prisons. He was doing a life sentence on the installment plan, one of them dudes. He said, man, every time I come to this prison, I remember that story and what that dude was smelling my underwears. He said, that's the only time, my whole time I was ever incarcerated, where somebody, you know what I mean, tried to play me like a pure punk. I said, come on, bro. He said, yes, that's right. He said, I always think about it every time I'm in this camp now. He said, I think about that dude, and I think if I could see him one more time, I'll go ahead and finish what I started. I said, for real, you ain't gonna let it go? He said, you don't never let nothing like that go. And that stuck in my mind, you know what I mean? I'm like, man, he got something, he's making a point there, you know what I mean? And so that was something to think about going forward. So in prison, sometimes you see stuff that you should not see. You know what I mean? Was it good that he saw that? Sure. At least he found out who stole from him. But it wasn't just that the fact that the dude stole from him. The dude was lusting off of him. And that's even worse than stealing. So he had a double whammy. So if he would have walked away, what do you think would have happened? He would have became a prison punk. And you don't want to be no prison punk. Man, they got some crazy stuff, man. Another time I'm talking to this dude, and he's telling me a story about another little dude who saw something in the visitation shed that he shouldn't have seen. And he's saying, man, I'm in a visitation with Youngster. I said, yeah. He said, yeah, Youngster in the visitation. He said, you heard me? He said, man, well, Youngster didn't know. He said, the white boy. I said, the white dude. And that's how they say it in prison. So just, it is what it is. He said, so the white boy, you heard me? I said, yeah. He said, the white boy was getting that dope in. I said, he was getting the dope in? He said, yeah, Youngster, he was cool with my people, you heard me? But he didn't know, man. Look, man, you don't see nothing, man. So he saw the white boy's old lady hand him the bag. And he's like, damn. So the Youngster looking at the white boy, and he's like, dang, man, white boy got that stuff. He got a bag full of that. He got a bag full of the good stuff, And he's like, all right, cool, bet. And he says, so Youngster get back to the dorm, You know what I mean? And he think he gonna take it on himself to jack the white boy, you know what I mean? And so youngster go up to the white boy, you heard me? And he go in his locker during chow. He think he's slick. See, nobody realized youngster done saw the white boy get the bag in from his old lady. So they in the same dorm. This how the dude was telling the story. He said, they in the same dorm, you heard me? He said, youngster, he go to, you know what I mean? He stayed back from chow. And he said, you know, during Sunday, man, you know, Sunday evening and after visitation, man, dude gonna go to chow, you know what I mean? So most dudes go to chow. Well, youngster slick, he stayed back in the dorm. He break in the white boy locker. He find the bag of dope. He go under with the dope and he cut it up with everybody. Well, the white boy get back in the dorm. He can't find the dope. You heard me? He said, well, youngster didn't know that belonged to a head buster. I said, a head buster? He said, yeah, head buster. And look, when you doing time and extended lockdown, every single day is EPs. They run EPs. That's called episodes. They tell stories. They relive and reminisce. That's how you pass the time in extended lockdown when it's 120 degrees plus. You know what I mean? And so he's telling the story. He said, yeah. So he didn't know that the dope wasn't for the white boy. The dope was for a head buster in another dorm. So the youngster, he break it up and share with his people and everything. Well, when y'all kick back and the white boy ain't got that head buster stuff, that head buster beat the white boy down. And I'm like, yeah. He like, yeah. But white boy ain't do nothing wrong. He had did everything he was supposed to do. He was just waiting to y'all and he was going to get it to the head buster. I said, the head buster? He said, the head buster, you heard me? He said, man, say, bro, by the time they found out that youngster done took it from the white boy, he said, man, they got youngster in that dorm. They stayed back and they got him the same way he got the white boy, you heard me? He said they got him the same way. They all stayed back from chow, and during chow, they waited, head buster waited, you know, to chicken day. You think about the South, you ain't missing no fried chicken. Well, the head buster had it planned. He had his people stay back in the dorm, and this is the way dude was saying it. They stayed back in the dorm, you heard me? By 5 or 6 dudes, youngster thought he was going to get that chicken. He said, nah, youngster, not today, you heard me? He said, head buster soldiers got him. He said what he did, youngster didn't realize he messed up the system. The flow of the narcotics, he said he shut that down. There was a system in place. The whole yard was going to get to share the fruit of the labor from the white boy. But youngster was playing games. He didn't realize who he was taking from. See, he didn't know the white boy was a mule for that head buster. So the head buster had his people. He interrupted, and then he used the people's stuff. He said, man, they stayed back and violated that youngster so bad. That youngster ain't never been a man since. He still walk funny. I said, he walk funny? He said, man, they put something off in him. They put something off in him. I said, they put something off in him? He said, man, youngster ain't never stole nothing again. You know what I mean? But he was taking something every week because they turned that boy into a boy, you heard me? He said, man, he should have pretended like he ain't saw what the white boy got in the visitation said. He said he thought he was slick on steal something. You heard me? I'm like, bro? He's like, bro? I go back. I'm laying on my rack. I'm thinking to myself, man, I don't want to see nothing, you know. But you in prison. Sometimes you're going to see things that you don't want to see. And, of course, I'm going to have to tell you stories about stuff I saw and times I had to get off. You know what I mean? And get my butt whipped, you know. But you got to fight no matter what, even if you lose, you know. It ain't about winning and losing all the time. It's about standing up for your dignity and for your moral values. And you know what? There are 3 things you don't mess with when you're incarcerated. Punks, gambling, and narcotics. Stay away from them. You know what I mean? And your prison sentence will be a little bit easier. If you like this video and you like anything crime and prison related, give a like and subscribe to the Pen and the Shank, the most unusual and unique crime and prison channel experience on YouTube, where we're doing things a little bit different in the genre. Man, share in the comments a story that you might know, or what one of these stories were you most surprised to hear, and what would you have done in those situations if you would have saw something that you should not have saw. Man, let's get it.